And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Most Important Conversations meditation. We run these meditations Monday through Friday each week, and each meditation begins with a talk, and the talk and theme of that talk is centered around liberation. We pull the content around each talk from our main program called Whole Life Architecture. You can find out more at tmicglobal.com. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about suffering. We've been talking about how we, as creators of our own life, create our suffering. We create the conditions, even if we haven't created the actual instant or moment of suffering. We created the conditions for that to occur. Sometimes we create those conditions years in advance without realizing it. And so one of the areas that we've also been touching on around suffering is the importance of self-trust. And it's an interesting thing. Last week we spoke about projection and how we are always projecting out into the world that which we are. And if we don't have self-trust, then we are going to be projecting out into the world, could call it self-doubt. But we're going to be projecting out into the world our weakness as opposed to our strength. Self-trust is how we develop our strength. It's how we internalize our strength. And so we talked about last week how projection is really a mirror reflection of yourself. And then we do that when we're uncertain about ourselves. You'll find that the more self-trust you develop and the more certain you become about yourself, the more certainty you have around who you are, what matters to you, what's important to you, what your intention is for your life, what you seek to create with your life by design versus purely tolerating your life by default, that the projection will start to diminish. That what you'll find yourself more in like an empty space, which is a good thing, where you're unmoved and not reactive to the things going out into the world. And therefore, the things in what we call the world without, because they're not affecting you, there's no sort of tug of war. You don't feel compelled to project, which is like a forceful action, your egoic will into the world, your identity will into the world. You don't find that you have to do that as much. The more self-trust you develop, the more you connect to the deepest, the most essential parts of yourself as a creator, the more you connect to your source essence. You don't need to project. You don't need to create a mirror reflection of yourself back at yourself in the world because you know yourself. You've connected to yourself. And as soon as we do that, as soon as we start to accomplish that sort of that transformation, that shift, as soon as we attain that kind of shift, and it's gradual too. It's not necessarily going to be a one and done. But as soon as you notice that you're detached from the world of effects, from the world out there, and you feel totally at peace and totally in the sense of self-trust with who you authentically are, something amazing really starts to happen. This opening starts to occur. You become more peaceful, you become more graceful, you become more compassionate. We talked about how compassion is the antidote to suffering. And remember, compassion isn't this sort of emotional state, although there are oftentimes emotions affiliated with it. But what's really going on under the surface with compassion is a total acceptance for the isness of life, for what is going on, who's doing it, apparently why it's happening. All of that stuff is just totally accepted. And you're moving on a different plane than most people. And you'll know that because you'll see things that are bothering people, that are trapping them, that are keeping them stuck, that are frustrating them, creating anxiety, whatever their reaction is. You're unmoved by it. And I don't mean unmoved in like a way where you have no access to your emotions. It's just you feel like you're standing slightly to the side of the drama that's going on in reality, and you're not being sucked into it. That's what I mean by unmoved. And when we get to this state, the thing that starts to shift is life becomes really playful. You can connect to that essence of play. Life becomes more joyful because your joy is coming from within. It's not conditional on what's going on outside of you. And you find that you can open yourself more and more, and you start to see possibility as opposed to limitation. You start to have a more positive attitude towards yourself. You have more life satisfaction. And because you're standing in the trust of yourself, you're knowing what the Tibetan Buddhists call jnana. Your knowing, your deep inner wisdom, your deep knowing becomes stronger and stronger and louder, which means it sort of becomes this recursive, reinforcing situation where the less you trust in the world out there and the more you trust in your own world within, the more playful, the more joyful, and then it compounds and it just keeps kind of moving. So it's no different than suffering. The more you suffer, the more you will suffer. Suffering compounds. Well, self-trust also compounds. And self-trust is only accessible through the path of liberation, because our conditioning in this world is to not trust ourselves. Our conditioning in this world is to look for opinion leaders, so-called experts out there for what you should do, why you should do it, who you should be, when you should do whatever you're doing. We've not been conditioned as a society to trust ourselves. We've been conditioned as a society to trust others. And implicit in that is the belief that I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't know the right things. And this goes to knowing. And the whole conversation we've had recently in whole life architecture about the distinction between knowing and belief, and how deeply rooted this is in our understanding of our lives and of our relationship to life. When you get to the place where you begin to trust yourself, an inner knowing flourishes. That's pre-linguistic. And it isn't about something you can point to in some particular book that you read. I mean, people may have talked about the thing that you're experiencing as an inner knowing, but you didn't learn it from a book because it's coming from within you. Once you get to that seed of trust inside of yourself, you flip from the recursive suffering that continues to compound, and instead trust and self-trust and inner knowing begins to compound. You start going the other way, but you need to be liberated from your conditioning to access this. Because as long as we believe that we don't know, that inner knowing that we all have remains covered over and hidden, because our focus is outside. I don't know, someone else has the answer. And as long as we're thinking someone else outside of us has the answer, there's no need to unlock that seed of self-trust. There's no need to look for it, because the answers aren't within. That's what we've been convinced of. In fact, you could say the whole personal development and self-help industry is based on this premise that there is someone out there, some expert out there, some book out there, some course out there that you need to pay for to get access to this information. That doesn't mean there aren't things that we can teach each other. I'm not saying that being in being in relationship to people helps us learn. It certainly does. In fact, even we're learning together right now through this conversation. But what I am saying is, for those really deep and profound and important aspects of understanding yourself and who you should be, the answers are within you. And learning to trust those answers as a guidance system, learning to develop what we call in whole life architecture emotional sobriety. That's an inner practice. That's not something you can learn it conceptually on the surface, but to learn it is to embody it, which is to practice it. And so self-trust is only an inner journey. You can't learn to trust yourself by trusting someone else. But we have to be liberated from our conditioning. And when we finally attain that state, or I should say, because liberation is more of a continuum, when we finally attain that first crack of liberation, that first burst of awareness, outside of our conditioning, outside of the constructs, it's almost like a rebirth occurs. And suddenly life becomes possibility. Suddenly life becomes playful. Suddenly life becomes joyful. And we realize that the joy we experience from without was so superficial compared to the joy that lies within being able to love and trust oneself. To not be in constant judgment of yourself and critique, comparing yourself to the world without, to others out there, what they say and what they do and what they look like. This inner knowing, the Tibetan word for it is yeshe, and it means primordial intelligence. You realize that you are yourself at the beginning and the end. That in the same way that God made humans in his image as a creator, we also, as creator, embody the I am mystery. The Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, the I am that I am creator mystery. We don't have to find the beginning of how we know what we know with this primordial intelligence, this inner wisdom. It doesn't matter where it comes from or where it began. That's irrelevant to knowing that you have access to it. That's irrelevant to knowing that you can wield it as a creative tool, that self-trust, that primordial intelligence, that inner knowing, that I am that I am, which is what the burning bush said to Moses in the Old Testament. When Moses asked the bush, "Who should I tell people you are?" And he says, "I am that I am." When you connect to the I am that I am, the inner essence creator of you, the superficiality of the world without comes blaring at you. It's so self-evident and obvious. Once you start to see this, you can't walk around and not see how the world is predominantly run by people's egos, by people's identities, by people's trying to out-identity someone else's identity. And the foolishness of it, the frivolousness of it, the meaninglessness of it is so glaring at that point. I mean, it's just one big high school. Everyone comparing what they have or who they are to someone else and binding ourselves into little cliques and judging others who aren't in our clique. Only unfortunately, the judgment can oftentimes be violent and deadly because that's how deadly an unrestrained ego that is thinking you is, versus you being able to be the creator of an identity that aligns with the essence of who you are. All of this requires liberation from your conditioning to get to. What we see in the world is an unliberated world, despite all of the championing of the cause of freedom and all of this stuff. No one's en masse doing the work to get to it. It's individuals and small communities that are doing it together. But if we look at the masses, what we have is a massive egoic reaction, a massive identity reaction to everything in life. And what's under that is a lack of self-trust. Because when you trust yourself, it doesn't really matter what other people think and believe. Your focus is not on them. You don't care. You're, as I said, a little to the side of the society. You're outside of it, able to look at it for what it is. And you'll also find perhaps even a lack of interest in participating in a lot of it. This is what we talk about in whole life architecture when we refer to being in the world but not of it. You can selectively choose to participate in that which may be relevant to what you're creating, and you can ignore the rest because you're not caught up in the egoic drama. You've chosen to step outside of the game of your conditioning and are creating a new game for yourself. This is all what's possible when we understand at a macro level the cycle of suffering and how we can transform it into a cycle of creativity and self-trust. But it begins with connecting to the creator within, liberating yourself from your conditioning, and beginning to walk the path to develop yourself as a self-trusting creator of your life, so you can create a life by design. I'm going to pause there this morning, and I'm going to invite Mignon to join us to guide us through our meditation this morning.
Thank you so much, Chad. And hello, everyone. In today's practice, we'll gently shift a limiting belief or fear and embrace a new perception, one that better serves and supports you, creating space. And along the journey, I'll be offering cues, toggles, and creative imagery. So you might hear me spell out words or dial up or down, or invite playful or even bizarre imaginings, all intentionally designed to guide your experience using the 5-step neural sculpting meditation process. It's a process that helps to calm the nervous system. It primes the brain for creating supportive ideas and gives you agency in how you move through life. I've found that practicing the same meditation can be supportive in helping to reinforce desired outcomes and create lasting shifts over time. I hope it serves you in a good way. So let's begin this meditation with an inhale and an exhale. A light stretching of the neck, or relaxing the shoulders, or rolling out the wrists and ankles if that feels good. Getting aware of the body supported in this particular moment by the surface beneath you. What points of contact do you notice between your body and the chair or the cushion or the ground? Inviting your awareness of how your bones and muscles would like to settle just a little more, letting their weight sink down toward the ground, the way gravity invites you to stick to the earth, rooted. And you might notice your breath enabling your body to settle into this moment. You can notice the inhale and exhale, the speed and the depth. What if you could follow that next exhale far and long and soft out of the body? So you could become aware of the next inhale. Deep in, effortless out. This is your breath breathing itself, filling you and emptying you, inviting your body to do what it does best, to be right here, right now. You can lengthen that breath if you'd like. You can slow it down, spread it out as your body settles deeper, easier onto the ground. And what about your space in this particular moment supports your comfort? Is it the familiar room? Is it something else like a scent or a soft texture like a blanket or a pillow? Maybe you'd like to bring to mind a soothing memory or association to contribute to your comfort in this one and only moment. Your body is supported. Your breath is serving you. And you are invited to stretch into your own playful mind. What if you imagined being a piece of paper? What kind are you? Something to sketch on, maybe a lined paper with writing on it, a ledger, a love letter. Are you nestled in a spiral notebook between others or a single page folded neatly into an envelope? What is it like to be a thin piece of paper? Or maybe it's more remarkable to imagine that you are a chair, a large wing chair upholstered with a soft chenille fabric people love to sit on. How does it feel to have someone sitting on your cushion? Do you prefer to be empty or occupied with someone making themselves comfortable? This is your creative mind stretching into itself. This is your body breathing and settling. I would remind you this story belongs to you. A story that looks at a fear or challenge and invites you to embrace it from a different vantage point that might be in better alignment. So, if you could bring to mind a situation, emotion, or belief, something recent or ancient that has caused discomfort, what comes up for you? Something like insecurity or LACK or something else. And are there colors or textures or patterns that stand out to you in reference to this emotion or belief? Maybe it's metal and spiky, dark and heavy. Maybe it's sticky. Perhaps there's a temperature, hot or cold. You might even notice subtle or obvious sensations. Maybe there's a tightening in your throat, a coldness in your hands, or a pit in your stomach. It could be something else altogether. What do you notice if you imagine a sensation at all? And your breath is breathing and your body is settled. and your creative mind is stretching and can go wherever you want it to go. And because you are the creator of this story, you get to transform the discomfort, fear, or belief into something that better serves. So perhaps there's a word that best supports you at this moment. What comes to mind? A word like courage, courage, or strength, or empowered. What does your creative mind notice when you give it permission to release discomfort? How amazing is it that you can stretch your imagination to create something that supports you in a better way? Because your breath is breathing and your body is right here. Perhaps you notice a shift when you introduced this better way that is more supportive. What do you notice? If the colors were dark, maybe they shift to brighter hues. Or if the textures were metallic and spiky, maybe you imagine them shaved down to a smooth silk. And if it was sticky or heavy, perhaps that shrinks and dries up to granules that blow away with your exhale. Or maybe you perceive something else entirely. Maybe you simply experience space or spaciousness. And if you perceive a shift or a new feeling, a sensation that is different from before, you are invited to mark that, to remember that by using your non dominant hand, where it will remind you tomorrow of the change you experienced today. Or you are welcome to make a hand gesture to remind you of this experience. And to remind yourself of this story, you are welcome to give it a word or phrase that commemorates this shift. Or perhaps a song comes to mind, one that captures the essence of this experience, a melody that can instantly bring you back to this moment. And with your motion, word, or song, you can return to the essence of this experience whenever it serves you and become more and more acquainted with shifting your perception and beliefs to those that more align with you. You are welcome to continue exploring this experience for the remaining quiet moments and beyond. Embrace it and be well.
And welcome back, everybody. Reconnecting to the world without from the world within, allowing yourself to integrate this meditation and to integrate this work around self-trust, to be able to start to practice it, because it is a practice. And the practice begins with liberating yourself from your conditioning, realizing that your view of how life should be, or what's expected of you from the world without, is all learned behavior. And to start to go within and to connect with that which makes you come alive. Dropping the expectations of others, unless the thing that they expect of you is something that truly speaks to you. Their expectation is irrelevant. We don't act because people expect us to do whatever. We act because it aligns with who we are at our deepest level. And when we learn to do that and learn to trust ourselves, the world begins to occur to us as a playground, a possibility, a canvas upon which we bring our own creation. Consider that as you go about your day today. I'd like to wish you all a wonderful day, and we will